AutoCAD is the world's most well-known computer-aided design CAD application. Just over 40 years ago, Autodesk released AutoCAD, and it's come along in leaps and bounds since then, providing a highly usable interface for architects, designers, and engineers to develop their ideas in both 2D and 3D. Not only does AutoCAD allow you to visualize your designs, but it also allows you to communicate your design intent by plotting your designs to drawings, both in paper and electronic formats. At first glance, AutoCAD looks like a complex undertaking, which can be daunting for the first-time user who wants to get their designs into the AutoCAD DWG file format. So join me, Shaun Bryant, as I take you through this course, Learning AutoCAD. In the course, I'll teach you the basics so that we can start your AutoCAD journey. So here's what you should know before you start this Learning AutoCAD course. This is the introductory course to get you started with AutoCAD in the LinkedIn Learning Library. You should be able to pick up the basics of AutoCAD with this course, so you'll learn how to drive AutoCAD and use the AutoCAD interface. Once you've done this Learning AutoCAD course, you can then move on to the AutoCAD 2023 Essential Training course, and then you can dive deeper into the features and functionality of AutoCAD. You should also know how to work with Windows-based applications. This particular Learning AutoCAD course uses AutoCAD for the Microsoft Windows operating system, so you should know your operating system as well. In this case, as I said, it's Microsoft's Windows operating system that we're using. So it's AutoCAD for Windows, not AutoCAD for Mac. When using the exercise files for this particular course, all of the associated exercise files can be downloaded from the library. They can be downloaded in a zip file that you can then unzip to a known location and save the files ready to take this particular course. The majority of the files that we'll be using in this particular course are the AutoCAD DWG file format, the native AutoCAD file format. And all of those DWG files that you download from the library to follow on in this particular course are saved in a 2013 DWG format. Now, the reason they're saved in the 2013 DWG format is it means that any version of AutoCAD from 2013 upwards can read the DWG files. What it also means is you don't have to be using the latest version of AutoCAD. You can use any version of AutoCAD from 2013 upwards to take this particular course. I will let you know what file you need to use for each particular video in each chapter in this course as well. So download the files and I'll call out which file we're using for each particular video. Store the exercise files in a known location. Always put them in a safe place where you know where they are. Otherwise, you won't be able to find them when you're trying to follow along with the videos in the course. And have the exercise file open before starting the video. That way you can then follow along immediately when each video starts. In this particular course, we will be using the latest version of AutoCAD, which is AutoCAD 2023. Now, if you're using older versions of AutoCAD, you may notice that your interface for AutoCAD does look slightly different. What you'll notice in the 2023 interface of AutoCAD is that we have this dark effect going on, and that's been the case in the last few versions of AutoCAD as well. This dark effect on the interface reduces eye strain, and Autodesk have introduced it. It gives AutoCAD a much slicker, much more professional look as well. The ribbon interface in AutoCAD 2023 has highly defined icons in the panels in each of the ribbon tabs. You'll notice that the icons are really clean and quite colourful in places as well, you'll notice in the ribbon. This is to allow for 4K and HD monitors that are often used for CAD work when you're using AutoCAD. Other things that you may notice in the 2023 interface especially are that the tabs at the top and the bottom of the drawing area looks slightly different as well. They've got a little bit of a sloping look to them now, rather than just having sort of a tab look like you might have in a filing cabinet, for example. But as you can see, the interface for AutoCAD 2023 is quite different to some of the older interfaces for AutoCAD. So just be aware that we're using the latest version of AutoCAD, which is AutoCAD 2023, and your interface, if you're using an older version of AutoCAD, could be slightly different, and some of the workflows may differ ever so slightly. We're starting a new chapter now in our Learning AutoCAD course, and we're going to be looking at the AutoCAD interface. For that reason, we've got a new drawing for you to use all the way through this chapter. It's called interface.dwg, and you can download that from the library to follow along with the videos in this particular chapter. So what we're going to look at first in the AutoCAD interface is the quick access toolbar and the application menu. Let's jump into the application menu first. That's in the top left corner of your AutoCAD screen. So if you come up here to the top left corner, you can see the AutoCAD icon, the red A just there. Now, all Autodesk products have an application menu. So when you click on the icon in the top left corner, there's your application menu right there. Now I'm just going to jump through what all the buttons do in the application menu, and I'll leave it up to you to investigate them further. So if I hover over new here, I can start a new drawing or a new sheet set. I can open files, I can save files. I can also save as to different file formats if I need to. I can also import and export different types of files, and I can also publish by way of printing, batch plotting. I can even 3D print there, you'll notice as well. I can print there as well. There's all my printing settings, and I've got various drawing utilities available to me also. I can also close my files here. I can close the current drawing or close all drawings if I've got more than one drawing open. You'll also notice down here I've got the options button, which when I click on it will open up the options dialog box in AutoCAD as well. You don't need to worry about any of the settings in here at all. Basically, these are all of your regular AutoCAD settings that allow AutoCAD to function as you use it on a day-to-day basis. So I'll just click on cancel there and jump back to the application menu like so. So we've got various buttons here as well that allow me to display recent documents or open documents. So there's my interface drawing that's open, and I can go back to recent documents there like so. I can also search for files up here if I want to, and I've also got various options here in the list. I've got an ordered list that I can do by size. So for example, I can do that by size, name, etc., by type. I can also change what it looks like here as well. I can have large icons. I can even go for large images of my drawings if I want to as well. I tend to use the small icons like that, and I tend to do it by name or by size, or possibly even just by ordered list like that. You'll also notice there's a little pin. So if you're using drawings on a regular basis there's my interface drawing. I might be using that on a regular basis, for example. So what I might need to do there is pin that file open and use it accordingly for a particular project. So that's my application menu. I'll just hit escape on the keyboard a couple of times to close that particular menu down. Now, the other thing you've got is the quick access toolbar, which is right next door to the application menu icon. So we've got here icons such as new, open, save, save as. We've also got open from web and mobile and save to web and mobile. I'll mention that later on in the course. We can also plot, which prints our drawings. We've got undo and redo. I can also customize the quick access toolbar by clicking on what looks like a little eject button. If you used to use CD players back in the day, that's kind of like an eject button, and it allows you to add other things to the quick access toolbar if you wish. I'll just hit escape there to lose that menu. And last but not least, you can also share your drawings as well. Now that's covered in the AutoCAD Essential Training course. So if you do want to find out what share drawing does, you might want to do this Learning AutoCAD course and then jump into the AutoCAD Essential Training course. We're staying in our interface.dwg file that we used in the previous video. And what we're going to look at this time in this particular video is the ribbons and the panels that are available to you when you use the AutoCAD interface. You'll normally find them at the top of the screen. So we talked about the application menu and the quick access toolbar. There's the ribbon directly underneath. Now it's a ribbon, so it's got various ribbon tabs that you can click on like so to go to different commands in your AutoCAD interface. The majority of the time you'll tend to be in the Home tab here, like so. Now in each of these tabs you have what is known as panels. They're known as ribbon panels. So we've got the Draw panel, we've got the Modify panel, we've got the Annotation panel. And all of these have various commands available to you. So for example, on the Draw panel here, if I click on the little arrow fly out there for circle, there's all the different circle commands I can use. It's the same with arc. If I click on the arc one there, you can see there's all the different arc commands available to me in AutoCAD. So as you can see, these little triangles in each of these particular menus, these ribbon panel menus, give you lots of different commands to use. But you'll notice you've got flyout arrows on the name panels here of each of the panels as well. So if I click here on the little arrow there for draw, it gives me even more draw commands, and I can click on the pin and that will pin that open. If I unpin it, it will go back into the ribbon like so. So it gives me that ability just to click and pin and use other commands that are available in that particular ribbon panel. Now, the other thing that you can do with ribbon panels is you can make them into what they call floating ribbon panels. So, for example, if I wanted the Draw panel down here in the drawing area, I can just click and drag it into the drawing area, and you can see the ribbon tidies itself up for me. I don't need to worry about that. So what I could do there now is use my Draw tools here instead, and perhaps go to a different tab on the ribbon and work with some different commands. Now the benefit I've got there is if I want that ribbon panel to go back into the ribbon, let's say I'm using the Annotate tab, for example, for annotation and dimensions, but I want the Draw panel now to go back into the ribbon. Well, if I hover over it and click on this little T-shaped icon here, Return Panels to Ribbon, it puts it back into the ribbon. But you would have thought it would put it back in the Annotate tab, my current ribbon tab. But no, it's popped it back in the right place in the Home tab on the ribbon. There's the Draw panel, back where it should be in the ribbon. So you can move those panels around in the ribbon if you want to as well. Now, one more thing which a lot of new users get really freaked out by is you can change the appearance of the ribbon as well. And that often scares people a little bit. It's this little white button here that people click on by mistake, and it actually says minimize to panel buttons. If I click once on it, you'll see that the ribbon changes. If I click twice, it changes again. If I click 3 times, it almost disappears completely. But if I click one more time, it takes me back to the standard ribbon interface in AutoCAD. So if you do get a ribbon that looks like that, don't panic. It's that little white button just there at the top of the ribbon. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see there that you then go back to your regular ribbon display in the AutoCAD interface. Once again, we're staying in our interface.dwg file for this particular video. What I want to show you now is the difference between palettes and dialog boxes in AutoCAD. Both of them are used in AutoCAD for user input to define various objects and work with certain features and tools in AutoCAD. So what about a palette? What is a palette in AutoCAD? Well, a very common palette that you would use on a regular basis is your Layer Properties Manager. So that's in the Home tab on the ribbon. So there's the Home tab up there, and there's the Layers panel there. And if you click on Layer Properties, it will open up the Layer Properties Manager. So if I just drag this down a little bit like so, I can click on a corner and just drag and make it bigger like so. There's my palette and I can make it bigger. Now what I can do there is I can obviously hover over each of these columns like so and drag and make them bigger, just like I can in things like Excel and so on. So you can see there that I can make things bigger and smaller should I need to. And I can also do things like the line type there so that I can see the actual words, the line weight, I can see the definition of the line weight and so on. So that is a palette in the AutoCAD interface. So how do I know that that's a palette? Well, normally a palette will have a vertical title bar. So you can see there, Layer Properties Manager, and it's vertical down the side. You can also, with a palette, use a thing called Auto Hide and also change the settings of the palette and where it is located in your AutoCAD drawing area. So Auto Hide is this one here. So if I click there, you can see it disappears, but when I hover over the palette title bar, it comes back. If I go back up here and click on Auto Hide again, that leaves it open, so it's there and it's kind of on top of everything that I'm doing. So you can auto hide a palette in AutoCAD. Now a palette can also be docked, so I can click and drag and dock it to one side of the screen. So when I dock it there like that, it's docked to the side of the screen, so it's there all the time when I'm in and out of AutoCAD in various drawings. If I don't want it docked, I just click up here on the title bar in a space and drag again, and that'll bring it back into the AutoCAD screen. And you'll notice there I can move it around. And if I kind of touch it to one side, can you see that the title bar of the palette also flips from one side to the other? So that's a palette in AutoCAD. Let's close the Layer Properties Manager, and we can click on the cross there just to close the palette. So what's the difference between a palette and a dialog box? Well, let's say I went to the Insert tab on the ribbon. I wanted to create an AutoCAD block. Now, if you want to learn more about AutoCAD blocks, you need to go into the AutoCAD Essential Training course. I'm just using this as a particular dialog box that you might use on a regular basis in AutoCAD. So if I go to the Insert tab here and I go to this little flyout here, I've got a choice of Create Block or Write Block in the Block Definition panel on the ribbon. If I click on Create Block, it'll bring up what is known as a dialog box. So you can see the difference there immediately between a palette and a dialog box. I can resize, as you can see, I can hover over the corner, hover over the edge, make it bigger, make it smaller, like so, quite easily. But normally with a dialog box, you don't need to make it bigger or smaller because everything's there. And you have got a default size. So if I drag that out again and drag it back again, you can see there that obviously from that perspective, I can drag it and it stops at a certain point, showing the minimum required in the dialog box. So a dialog box is normally what I would call parameters and input. So I'm specifying the base points, the objects and the behavior of my AutoCAD block in the block definition dialog box. In something like the Layer Properties Manager, where I'm working in a palette, I'm working in a slightly different way. It works as in its functions of AutoCAD rather than parameters that I'm setting for an object, in this case a block in AutoCAD. So I'll just click on cancel there to close this particular dialog box. Now you'll notice that palettes don't have the OK, the cancel, the help, etc. They do have a help. You just go to the top right corner of a palette if you need help. But you'll notice that normally a dialog box requires you to OK it or cancel it. I'm going to cancel in this case because I don't want to use the command, but you can see there the fundamental differences between a palette and a dialog box when you're working with your AutoCAD interface. We're staying in our interface.dwg file, and what we're going to look at in this particular video is the AutoCAD status bar. The AutoCAD status bar is located in the bottom right corner of your AutoCAD application. It's down here. So you can see all these different icons. Some are highlighted blue, some are highlighted grey. Anything that's highlighted blue is on, anything that is grey is off. It's really easy to understand in that regard. So you'll notice down here that things like my snap mode are on. Doesn't need to be on for this drawing, so I simply click on it and that turns it off and turns it grey. You'll notice here that my polar tracking is on, and ideally I want to be using that at all times. That's one of the ones that needs to stay on all the time. You can set various angles for your polar tracking there as well. So you might want to use 45-degree angle increments for your polar tracking, for example. We'll cover polar later as we start working through the course. Another one here is your object snap tracking. That's another one that you always leave on because you use it in conjunction with this one here. Object snaps, the next one along. And if I click there on the arrow, you can see that we've got various object snaps available to us to allow us to draft accurately in AutoCAD. I would suggest that you make sure that endpoint is ticked. Midpoint isn't ticked at the moment. If you click on it, it becomes ticked. So you want endpoint, midpoint, center. You also want intersection and extension on all the time. So if you make sure that those 5 are ticked and then click on the little flyout arrow there, that'll close your object snap menu. This one highlighted here is all about annotation objects, which we don't actually cover in this particular Learning AutoCAD course, so you don't need to worry about that one at all. Also, if you want to customize your status bar, you click on this little icon at the end here. Don't click on this one, clean screen, because that will literally clean your screen of all of the ribbon and icons and things, and it's a bit of a pain to get back again. So don't click on clean screen. It's the little 3 bars, the customization icon that you want. When you click on that, you'll see a big long menu appear, and this is all of the tools that you can switch on and off in your status bar in your AutoCAD interface. So there's a couple here that I'd like you to switch on. So we're going to make sure that we've got coordinates on. So click on the word coordinates, that'll put a tick next to it. Click here on dynamic input as well. That puts a little tick next to that one. And last but not least, we're going to select line weight as well. So those 3 now are turned on in your status bar down in the bottom right corner of your AutoCAD screen. So we come down to the little 3 bars again here, like so. Click on the 3 bars. That closes the customization menu. So you'll notice now, when I move the crosshair around in the AutoCAD drawing, you can see my coordinates here are displaying. I can right click there and I can show specific, geographic, absolute or relative coordinates if I want to. I'll hit escape there just to lose that little menu. And as I move along the status bar now, there's my dynamic input that we switched on, or DIN mode as it's known as. And I can right click on that and I can work with my dynamic input settings in the drafting settings dialog box if I want to. I'll click on cancel to close that. Moving along as well, we've also got another one here. There's our line weights there, show and hide line weights. So if I click on that one, anything with a line weight now, you'll notice displays in the drawing area. It's a toggle to turn the line weights on and off, because sometimes when the line weights are on, you can't see the wood for the trees in your drawing. So line weight there, if I click on it again, will turn the line weights off, and we just use a default line weight while we're working in our AutoCAD drawing. So that's our status bar in the AutoCAD interface. Now you'll be using that a lot more as you work with AutoCAD, both in the Learning AutoCAD course and in the Deeper Dive AutoCAD Essential Training course. So get used to using that status bar in the bottom right corner of your AutoCAD screen. Once again, we're staying in our interface.dwg file for this particular video in this particular chapter. What I'm going to talk about is AutoCAD Web and AutoCAD Mobile and how you can save to the web and mobile folders from your AutoCAD desktop software. So, AutoCAD is a subscription-based piece of software now. You have to sign into AutoCAD using your Autodesk account to run AutoCAD. And that's using a thing called your Autodesk ID, which normally involves a username and a password. Now, when you open up AutoCAD, like you've got on the screen at the moment, if you go to the top right part of the screen, can you see you've got a little blue Head and Shoulders icon there with a username next to it? That's your Autodesk ID. If it's blue like that, it's letting you know that you are signed into your Autodesk account. Now, because AutoCAD is subscription-based, you have to sign into your Autodesk account anyway. So that should be blue anyway, with a username or perhaps an email address showing as your username in that little box there at the top of the screen. Now, I've deliberately hovered over that box to get the tooltip to come up, because the description of this is really important. So your Autodesk account gives you access to online servers that integrate with your AutoCAD desktop software. So basically what this means is you've got some online servers, cloud-based servers that you can use to store your drawings and other documents. You can create subfolders in there as well to store project documents and so on. So because I'm signed into my Autodesk account, that gives me access to the AutoCAD web and mobile folders. So I've got a drawing here, my interface.dwg file, and I want to save that to the cloud, my web and mobile folders, these online servers. So I go over here to the quick access toolbar. So let's just make sure my drawing is just zoomed slightly there because I moved my mouse. So if it does that, just double click on the wheel of your mouse to zoom to the extent of your drawing again. So I'm going to come up here and there's my little icon just there, save to web and mobile, and I can also open from web and mobile. Now I want to save this drawing to my web and mobile folders, which are cloud-based folders where I can save the drawing to. So when I click on save to web and mobile, it'll bring up a dialog box where I can actually save the file to. It takes a few seconds because it's based obviously on your internet access and your bandwidth. Now, you might get a little dialog box pop up that says, oh, hang on a minute, you haven't installed the driver for the web and mobile folders. It takes 30 seconds to install that driver, literally. Just click on it, install the driver, run it, and then go back to save to AutoCAD Web and Mobile again on the Quick Access toolbar. So you can see I've got lots of different files and folders in there. I've got client folders, LinkedIn Learning folders. There's some AutoCAD folders in there. I've even got some Autodesk University folders there. I was speaking at Autodesk University 2021 last year, and there's my data set, for example. So I can save folders and files in here to the cloud-based web and mobile folders that come with AutoCAD. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give this a different file name. I'm going to click here and call it interface _ web, so I know it's a different drawing. And then I'm just going to literally hit save, as I would with any file. So that file is now saved to the cloud, and sometimes you'll get this pop up. So there you go. It's now saying that I can use things like AutoCAD Web and AutoCAD Mobile to view my drawing as well. Now, AutoCAD Web and AutoCAD Mobile are two other applications that come with your Autodesk AutoCAD subscription account. So you can use AutoCAD in a web browser, you can use AutoCAD Mobile on a mobile device, such as a tablet or a phone. These come with your AutoCAD subscription, so check those out, maybe see whether you want to be using those. But you'll notice at the top of the screen now, I've got a different file path there. It says C users P3650, etc., etc. So what's happened there now is this particular file is saved to the web and mobile folders. And you'll see that the name of the file on the file tab has changed up here, interface web. So if I now close that, what I could do is close that, and it would basically take me to a blank AutoCAD screen, and I could go and open the file. I'm just going to leave the file open. It really doesn't matter. But what I can do is I can open the file from the web and mobile folders as well. So I can go to open. So just go up to the top of the screen here like so. And that will allow me to go and find my file. So if I come down here, these are all folders, by the way, and there's the DWG files with the familiar yellow and blue icon. So if I come down to I, there's interface web. Click there like so, and I click on open, and that will now open that file from the web and mobile folders. So that file has now been opened. Now it won't do much because the file is already open here on the screen. So it won't look any different. It's just kind of said, oh, that drawing's already open, so you don't need to worry. But the trick is with this is you can save drawings to the cloud. The web and mobile folders are a cloud-based repository for your drawings. But also when they're in the cloud, you can then become mobile with AutoCAD and start using things like AutoCAD Web and AutoCAD Mobile, using them on different devices, different interfaces to access your AutoCAD drawings. We're starting a new chapter now in our Learning AutoCAD course, and we're going to be looking at a new drawing as well. It is the same drawing, just with a different name. This time the drawing is called geometry.dwg, and as usual, you can download it from the library to follow along with the videos in this particular chapter. Now, when we talk about geometry in AutoCAD, we're talking about things like lines, arcs, circles, rectangles, etc. So we're going to do a little bit of drafting. We're going to create some geometry, and we're going to look at how we create that geometry and the tools that we use within AutoCAD to generate that geometry in our drawings. So the first thing we're going to look at in this particular chapter is OSNAP, Object Snaps, and OTrack, Object Snap Tracking. Now, if we go down to the status bar at the bottom right of your AutoCAD screen, you'll notice down here, there is OTrack there, Object Snap Tracking, known as AutoSnap. And here we've got our Object Snaps, our OSNAPs. Now, you'll remember we talked about these earlier. Click on the little flyout arrow next to the Object Snap icon. Make sure that those 5 snaps are switched on: endpoint, midpoint, center, and also intersection and extension. And then just click on the arrow again on the status bar. That will close that menu. Then make sure that Object Snaps is on. It should be blue, not grey like that, so blue. And also Object Snap Tracking should be on, so that should also be blue like that. You also want to make sure over here that your polar tracking is on as well. That should be blue, and if you click on the fly out arrow there, just make sure that's set to 45 degrees for the moment, like so. Now we're back in the drawing, and what we're going to do, we're going to do a little bit of zooming and panning to get into a space where we can work with OSnap and OTrack, Object Snaps and Object Snap Tracking. So we're going to zoom into this area here. So get the crosshair here, just roll upwards on the wheel a little bit, and then hold down the wheel as a button on the mouse, and you'll see a little hand appear. Just move the mouse upwards slightly, like so. That's called panning, and when you release the mouse wheel button, the hand disappears. So we've got a little bit of space here to work in. We're going to create a small table. Now you'll notice if you go to your Layers panel on your Home tab, we're on the A700 MFFE layer. That's our furniture layer. So it's this orange color layer that all the other furniture is on. And we're just going to generate a rectangle. And the rectangle is created from the Draw panel up here. And it's in this corner here. There's the rectangle command right there. There's a little fly out there. So it might show polygon instead, but you need rectangle. So you click on the rectangle command and come into the drawing area. It's asking for the first corner point. Pick a point sort of down here in this little rectangular area. So click about there, drag upwards to the right with the mouse, and you'll see the rectangle start to appear with a prompt for the other corner point. Now the good thing is, because we switched dynamic input on, that's on our status bar as well, you can see that we've got two distances there. The blue highlighted one is the one that you're going to input first. So that's 2500, like that. Press the Tab key on your keyboard, which is just up on the sort of top left of your keyboard normally. Looks like an arrow pointing to the right. Then we're going to put in 1500, like that. Press the Tab key again, and that locks out those two distances. Now, they're not locked permanently, but AutoCAD now knows that those are the distances you want. You can now just press Enter, and that creates a rectangle, 2500 by 1500. Now, those distances in this drawing are in metric millimeters. I work in metric millimeters in the UK. Obviously, if you're working in different units, that would work slightly differently, like feet and inches, for example. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You don't have to do that at all, but I'm going to zoom in by putting my crosshair in the middle of the rectangle we've just created and just roll up on the wheel on my mouse a couple of notches, like so, just to make that a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to literally position it and roll up and down on the wheel like that, and it makes it a bit bigger. Again, hold down the wheel and pan slightly to get it to the center of your screen. Always zoom and pan to get into the objects that you're working on. It's much, much easier. So we're going to take a look at Object Snap first. Now I want to place a circle as a decorative inlay on this table that I've created. It's a rectangle representing a rectangular table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the Draw panel, and what I'm going to do here is just come up here to the Line command, like that, click on Line, come into the drawing area, and it asks me to specify the first point of my line. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hover over this bottom left corner. There's my endpoint snap, like so. I then left click, drag the line up here, and there's my other endpoint snap. I left click again. So there's my line. It's now waiting for another line segment. So I can just press enter now, and that finishes my line command. So I've drawn my line, and the good thing is the midpoint on that diagonal can be the center of my circle, because I then know I'm going to the dead center of my rectangle. So what I can do now is I can come up here and go to Circle, click on the flyout, and select Center Radius from the drop-down menu. And then I hover here over that midpoint and left click. As soon as I left click, the center of my circle is placed. So I can now just move my mouse until I can see the circle getting bigger. I'm prompted for a radius of my circle. I'm going to go with a radius of 650 there and press enter to confirm. and there's my circle. I can then simply delete that line by clicking on it and then right-clicking and selecting erase. So there's my circular inlay in my rectangular table using just object snaps. Now, wouldn't it be lovely if I didn't have to use that line and snapping to all those points? Let's do what we did with the line, the diagonal line. Let's select the circle, click on the edge of it with the little pick box in the crosshair there, right-click and erase. What we'll do this time is we'll utilize a bit of object snap tracking. So we need to just check with our little arrow here, make sure that we've got midpoint on, which we have, it's ticked. So I click on the little flyout arrow there. I then make sure that object snaps are on, they're blue. I make sure that object snap tracking is on, it's blue. So I go up to the circle command again, same circle command, center, radius. Click on the center radius there, come into the drawing area. It's asking for the center point of the circle. Now here's a really clever tool. Now I'm utilizing a bit of polar tracking, object snap tracking and object snaps here. I'm going to hover over that midpoint snap there. Do not click on it. Hover over it for a couple of seconds and then I'm going to come down to this midpoint here. Again, hover, but do not click. And then as you drag, you'll see your polar tracking line kick in. And as soon as you get near that other midpoint that we hovered over, can you see you get the intersection of the two midpoints? That is your polar tracking working in conjunction with your object snap tracking. So it's using an increment of 45 degrees, which is 90 degrees. Obviously, you can see the angles there. And what it's also doing is it's lining up those two midpoints using the object snap tracking. So I left click when I see the intersection with the green dash lines, and that circle is now dead center of my rectangle. I can type in my radius of 650 again, and there's my circular inlay on my table. So that is using object snap and object snap tracking. We're staying in our geometry.dwg file, and you can see I've left it zoomed in on the table we created in the previous video. We're going to take a look at the orthogonal, and polar tracking settings, drafting settings that you can use in AutoCAD. Now, in order to do that, you need to stay on the furniture layer that we were using to create our table made from our rectangle and our circle. So what we're going to do, go to the Layers panel in the Home tab on the ribbon, click on the drop down there, and just make sure that you're using the A700MFFE layer. So you just click on the name of the layer, don't click on the color or the lock symbol or anything, just the name of the layer, and it will make sure that that is the current drafting layer. Now, in the previous video, we did a little bit of zooming and panning. I'm going to roll back on the wheel a few notches to zoom out. Hold down the wheel on the mouse and move the mouse, just pan it across slightly. So I've got this little bit of space here to the right of our new table here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use ortho and polar to create another rectangular table. This time, though, we're just going to create it from line segments rather than create a rectangular polyline. Now, you'll remember I asked you to set your polar settings to 45 degrees, didn't I? Do you remember that? Down here on the status bar, there's polar there. I click on the flyout and it's set at 45. I'd like you to change that now to 90 degrees. So that means that any polar tracking we do now will only be at 90 degrees. So basically horizontal and vertical. And we're going to create a rectangular table using the same dimensions as the table we've created previously. So I'm going to go over to the line command here in the draw panel. So there's the line command there. Click on the line command, come into the drawing area, and it's prompting for your first point. Now, I'm not worried about exact coordinates here at all. You just need to pick a point about where my crosshair is there, near your other table, in the space, in the floor plan. So it's a left click. Now, we're going to use polar tracking first before we think about orthogonal, ortho. Okay, so I've clicked once, and if I move now, can you see? If I move to the right, I get a polar tracking line. If I move upwards, can you see there? I'm moving the mouse to get this to happen. I get a green polar tracking line and a distance and an angle. So we're going to go upwards from that first point we've selected. Just drag up the polar tracking line, and you'll see the little cross go up the green dashed line. You can see a distance in the box. Type in 1500, 1500, and just press enter. You don't need to worry about the angle of the line because the polar tracking is dealing with that for you. So it's vertical. It's an increment of 90 degrees. We're now going to go horizontally to the right, dragging along the horizontal polar tracking line. And you can see there that's locked into a different increment of 90 degrees. It's at 0 degrees to the right. That's the default in AutoCAD. So I'm going to type in 2500 in the box, press enter. Again, the polar tracking is looking after the angle for me. I come vertically downwards now. Can you see the angle is different on the polar reading there? It's 270. So I type in 1500 and enter. Again, the polar tracking is looking after the angle for me. Now, what I can do here, because I'm creating all of these line segments all at once, I can just right click and select close, and it will go back to the first point. So if I click there, takes me back to that first point where I started from. I don't have to worry about polar tracking or distances or anything. But you can see there now that I've created a rectangular table using just that polar tracking set to 90 degrees. Now, if I go and set ortho now, if I come down here, the ortho icon is here. There's ortho mode, orthogonally. So if I click and switch that on, you'll notice my polar tracking turns off. You cannot have ortho on and polar on at the same time and vice versa. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the lines that I've just created. So you can click on each of these, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Just right click and select erase on the shortcut menu and they're gone. You've deleted them. Okay, now we're going to do the same exercise again, putting the distances in, but we're going to use ortho this time. Now, ortho is really clever because I cannot draft in any which way apart from horizontally or vertically using ortho. It locks me down orthogonally in the X and Y directions. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my line command up here on the draw panel. There's the line command. Come into the drawing area and I'm going to pick a point about here again, like I did last time. So it's a left click. And now when I move the mouse, you'll notice, can you see, I can only go up and down like so. I can only go in those directions, unfortunately. So basically what I'm going to need to do now is just move upwards. And again, I've got a distance. So I put 1500 in and I press enter. I go to the right. Notice no polar tracking line this time. I just put a distance in, 2500 like before, and press enter. I then come vertically downwards like so. And again, it's the 1500, just like we did before. And again, I can now just right click and select close. And it takes me back to the start point where I began again. So you can see that polar and ortho, whilst behaving in a similar fashion, polar is more flexible. So if I go down here and switch polar back on, I can pick what sort of angle increments I want to use, 90 degrees, 45 degrees, and so on. Orthogonal, this one here, locks me down just in the X and Y directions, vertically and horizontally. So ideally, you need to be using polar tracking all the time. The default setting for polar is 90 degrees anyway, but you could perhaps change it to increments of 45 degrees instead, like so, by clicking on the 45. So that's your polar and your ortho settings on your status bar in AutoCAD. We're staying in our geometry.dwg file. And what we're going to take a look at more closely now are some bits of geometry in your AutoCAD drawings. And we're going to look specifically at lines, arcs, and circles. Now, in the last few videos, we've been creating these tables that you can see on the screen. I've left the geometry drawing in the same location as it was at the end of the last video. What I'd like you to do is get rid of all the things that you've drawn. So you click on them, like so, put the crosshair over and click. That's a left click like that. Just select the lines like so, and it's a right click and erase. They go away like that. Select the rectangle, select the circle, right click and erase like so on the shortcut menu. So what we've got now is a nice clear space where we can draw our lines, our arcs and our circles. Now, as per previous videos, please check that in the layers panel, you are using the A700M FFE layer. That's our furniture layer. And also make sure that you're in, obviously, the Home tab on the ribbon. Now we're going to go down to the status bar and make sure that some of our settings are set. So we come down here, we make sure that polar tracking is on, We're not using ortho mode or orthogonal there. So we want polar tracking on. Click on the arrow next to polar tracking. We're going to change that back to 90 degrees. Then we make sure that our object snap tracking is on, our auto snap, as you can see there on the screen, and also make sure that your object snaps are on. They should be blue. Click on the arrow next to object snaps and make sure that those 5 object snaps are ticked: endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection, and extension. If they are, just click on the little flyout arrow there again to close the menu. They should already be on because we've preset them previously anyway. Now, we're going to draw the rectangular table again using the line command and the polar tracking. So let's do that first. So we go up to the draw panel, click on the line command here, like so. Come into the drawing area. Now, you can pick a point anywhere here. It's in this space, basically. I'm not worried about exact coordinates or anything. So I'm going to click once, and I'm going to move vertically upwards. There's my polar tracking line. Remember we did this before? So we're going to type in 1500, like so, and press enter because we're going vertically upwards this time. There's one side of our table. We then move the mouse horizontally to the right, and you can see there's our polar tracking line kicking in again. So we put the distance in the box, 2500. Now the reason we're getting all these distances in the box is because our dynamic input is switched on. I'll press enter one more time. So all this dynamic input is allowing us to see all this information on the screen. Dynamic input is normally on by default in AutoCAD. If you're not getting this information, it's this little icon just down here. DIN mode. It should be on, it should be blue. Remember, we switched it on the status bar earlier. So moving into that third segment now, you'll notice we're still in the line command. It doesn't matter if I go down to the status bar. When I come back into the drawing area, you can see there that I can still draw. So vertically downwards until we get our polar tracking line, type in 1500 in the box and press enter again. We can then use the right click and close like we did previously. There's our rectangular part of our table. Now, those are 4 separate lines this time. So you can see that one's a line, that one's a line, and so on. And I've done that deliberately this time. I don't want a rectangular polyline. I just want lines. Now, we're now going to create some arcs. So we've created the lines. We're going to look at arcs and then circles. So we're going to come over here to the draw panel again, and we're going to select the arc flyout. And you can see we've got various options available. Now what we're going to use is this one here, start, center, end. It creates an arc using the start point, the center, and the end point. So when you click on start, center, end and come into the drawing area, it's asking for the start point of your arc. Now arcs in AutoCAD have a default direction of counterclockwise. Anti-clockwise, it's sometimes called as well. So the start point of my arc is going to be here. So I'm going to left click on that endpoint snap there. I'm then going to come to the midpoint here on the line, left click again. And then as I come up to this endpoint and left click again, my arc is created. It's that quick and easy. Now remember, if you're doing the other side with an arc, we'll go back over to the arc command and select start, center, end again. I'm going to start on this corner. Remember, counterclockwise rule. Left click there, come down to the midpoint, left click again. And then down to this endpoint, left click again. So it's 3 clicks, endpoint, midpoint, endpoint. But you've got to be going in the right direction because the arc follows that counterclockwise rule. Now the benefit we have now is we have a very different shaped table. And we're going to create 2 circular insets for the table now using the midpoint of the 2 vertical lines. So we're going to go back up now to the draw panel and click on the circle flyout. And we're going to select center diameter this time. So there's center diameter. Left click on center diameter and come into the drawing area. It's asking you to specify the center point for your circle. So I'm going to use this midpoint snap on this line here. When I see the midpoint snap, it's a left click. And as I move outwards now, it's asking me for the diameter of my circle. So as we come out, I'm going to type in there a diameter of 850, like that. Press enter to confirm. And there's my circle of 850 diameter. Now, like I said in previous videos, we're using metric millimeters as the measuring tool in this particular drawing. So that's our unit of measurement is going to be metric millimeters. Now, one of the nice things is I can do the same again on the other side. I can go to circle, I can select center, diameter, use the same midpoint but on the other side, left click, drag outwards, type in 850 again, and press enter, and there's my other circular inlay on my table. I don't need the two vertical lines anymore. You can select both of those, right click, and erase on the shortcut menu. And there's our new table with the arcs on each end and the circular inlays on top, ready to be used in our floor plan. Once again, we're staying in our geometry.dwg file, and you'll notice we're still in a similar view to where we were in the last video. We're going to take a look at polylines, polygons, and splines. Splines are an irregular curve in AutoCAD, a polygon, multi-sided shape, and a polyline is a group of line segments combined to form the one object. So we're going to look at polylines first. We're going to create that rectangular table again, the 2500 by 1500 table. So make sure down here on your status bar that your polar tracking is on and that the angle is set to 90 degrees like mine is there. Make sure that your object snap tracking is on and also your object snaps are on. And just check your object snaps by clicking on the little flyout arrow and make sure that you've got endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection and extension switched on. Click on the little arrow again there on the status bar just to close the menu. So we're going to create a polyline this time, a closed boundary that represents that rectangular table. So again, we're using the A700 MFFE layer. It should still be the same layer anyway. And I'm going to go over to the draw panel and click on the polyline command this time. Click on the polyline command and come into the drawing area. And it's just like the line command. It's asking you to specify a start point. So let's have a look at that and see how that works. So what I'm going to do is just click once about here. And I'm going to use my polar tracking coming vertically upwards like we did before. I'm going to type in 1500. Again with that vertical polar tracking line kicking in and press enter. Then I'm going to drag to the right horizontally. And again 2500 and press enter, just like we did previously. Come vertically downwards again using the polar tracking, type in 1500 again and press enter, and then it's a right click, just like you would with the line command. You can select close on the shortcut menu, and that takes you back to the point where you started. Now when we did that with the line segments using the line command, it was 4 lines. This time you'll see it's a closed polyline we've created, a closed rectangular polyline. So you can do that using the polyline command. Also, we did it previously with the rectangle command and the line command as well. 3 different ways of creating that rectangle of the same dimensions. Now, we've created our polyline. We're now going to create a polygon, a multi-sided shape. In this case, we're going to create a hexagonal insert for our rectangular table. So I'm going to zoom in slightly. You don't have to. You might have a bigger bit of screen real estate than myself. And then I'm going to pan a little as well. Now, before I place the polygon, in this case a hexagon, I'm going to draw a circle. You remember how we did that with the object snap tracking? I'm going to go up to the circle command on the draw panel, and I'm going to go to center radius, like so. I'm then going to come into the drawing area. I'm going to hover over this midpoint. Remember, don't click on it. And then hover over this midpoint. Again, remember, don't click on it. And then just dragging along to the left, you'll see the polar tracking lines kick in. And when they intersect like that, it's a left click for the center of your circle. I'm going to come out now. Can you see there? There's the radius of my circle there. I'm going to put a radius in of 600 this time and press enter to confirm. So there's my circle of radius 600. Now the reason I've drawn a circle is we're going to utilize the center snap of the circle for the center of our polygon. So I'm going to come up here to the draw panel again, and where the rectangle command is, remember I mentioned there's a little flyout arrow there? Click on the arrow and select polygon from the flyout menu this time. Come into the drawing area and it asks for the number of sides. Now you can have anything from 3 sides up to 1024 sides for a polygon in AutoCAD. I've gone up to 12 sides, a dodecahedron. Anything above that amount of sides, you'll have to look it up, I'm afraid, on the internet to find out what the name of those polygons are. But we're going to go for a nice, easy 6 sides, which is a hexagon, and press enter. So 6 in the box and press enter. This is the bit that's interesting because it now asks for the center of the polygon. Because I've got my circle there, I can utilize the center snap of the circle. So move the crosshair and just touch it on the edge of the circle. You'll see the center snap appear like so. Now, I don't have to go all the way into the center to click on it. You can if you want to, but when you touch on the edge of the circle with the center snap switched on, this is what you get. Or as I come in now, you'll see I also get the center snap and the crosshairs touch on the center snap like that. Left click to confirm the center snap. And then you get 2 options of your polygons. There's actually 3 options of polygon. There's inscribed and circumscribed as per the menu on the screen. There's also an edge option on the right click shortcut menu. The edge option on the right click shortcut menu allows you to pick 2 points on an edge, and then each side of the polygon is the length of the distance between the 2 points. We're going to use the inscribed in circle option. So I'm going to come to inscribed in circle, and as I come in, can you see I can use my polar tracking now and my object snaps. Look, when I get to there, can you see I get an intersection? So I'm just coming vertically up that polar tracking line. Now I could come out to the right. Can you see I get a different orientated hexagon each time? So it's up to you which way you go. Go horizontally or vertically though. Don't go off at an angle like this or anything like that. You want that point there vertically, that point there horizontally. Don't mind which one you use, and then it's a left click. And you can see now that we are inside the circle. We're inscribed within the circle. Now, you might not want it inscribed within the circle. So let's just delete that particular polygon. I'm going to delete that now. I'll just hit the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of it. Now, you might get some weird things come up like that when you hover over the grips as well. If you do that, just move away, the menu disappears. We'll talk about grips and things in the AutoCAD Essential Training course that you do later, perhaps. So, with it selected, I can hit the delete key on the keyboard, or I could right-click and erase like we've done previously. I'm going to go back up to the polygon command here. There you go, polygon again on the little flyout menu. Number of sides, it's remembered 6 this time, so I can just press enter. I'm going to go back to the center snap. There's the center snap and left click. And this time, if I select circumscribed about the circle, if I come out to that same point, can you see the hexagon is around the circle? It's circumscribed about the circumference of the circle. So again, I can get a different orientation, but the hexagon is slightly bigger because it's going outside the circle. It's not inscribed inside the circle this time. So again, I don't mind if you do a vertical or a horizontal. I'm going to go with vertical and left click. And there's my hexagonal insert on my table. Now, if you don't want to keep the circle, just click on it. And again, it's a right click and erase, or hit the delete key on the keyboard. And there's our hexagonal insert in our table. Now, one last thing we're going to cover is splines. We're going to zoom out slightly, and I'm going to come over here like so. And can you see there's our new tables there in our sort of what I would call atrium reception area of our floor plan. And I'm just rolling back a bit. And can you see we've got a corner of a wall just here? We're going to zoom in on that area there. So put the crosshair near it, roll up on the wheel, and just pan a little bit until you can see that corner just there like that. And then what we're going to do, just pan across a little bit so you've got some space going over this way here like that. Now, we're going to use the same layer that we're on, the furniture layer, but we'll convert it in a moment. I'll show you how to use match properties. But what we're going to do is we're going to expand our draw panel by clicking on the flyout arrow, and we're going to pin it open. There you go, a little pin there. And you can see we've got some curvy little icons here. Can you see them? They're just there. There's that one there, spline fit, and that one there, spline CV, which is a spline with control vertices. We're going to use this one, spline fit. Click on it and it asks for a first point. You need to snap to the little end point just there on the end of the wall. Left click. And then just left click 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times. And then press enter to finish, like so. So you can see there that that is a spline drawn to fit those points that you've clicked. So what it is, it's an irregular curve. It's a non-uniform rational B-spline is the long definition of it. And what it means is it's following a mathematical formula to create that curve for you. Now, what we are going to do as well, we're going to do a little bit of measuring because we're going to do an offset and a tidy up. And we're going to create a little curved wall to kind of block off the reception area in this floor plan. You'll see how it looks in a moment when we're finished. So if we go over here to the Utilities panel, can you see we've got Measure? Click there and select Distance on the flyout menu. And we're going to measure from this corner here, there's an endpoint there, and just come vertically up. And can you see there we've got 120.65. If I left click, it will give me that distance on a readout on the screen. So you can see there that we're looking at 120.65 millimeters as our partition width. That's a bit exact. We'll just round that off to 120 for now. So I'll click on Exit in the Measure tool. We're going to go over to the Modify panel here. And we're going to click on this command here, Offset. We're then going to set our offset distance at the prompt to 120 and press Enter. We're then going to offset our spline, this one here. So click on it with the pick box, left click, move downwards like so, and left click again. And you'll see that's offset by 120. Just press Enter to finish. Now, last but not least, we need to tidy this up so it creates a wall. So ideally, we've got a little gap here that we need to resolve, and we need to draw a line from this endpoint here to this endpoint here. So let's do the line first. Line command, like we've done previously. Endpoint snap, left click. Endpoint snap, left click. Enter to finish. So that's our wall closed off at that end. We just need to expand it down here to this line here. So I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see. And it's this little olive colored line here that we want to go to. So I'm going to go up to the Modify panel, click on this little flyout here where it says Trim and select Extend. Again, we cover some of this in this course. We also cover a lot of these commands and modify commands in the AutoCAD Essential Training course as well. So I'm just going to click there on the end, and can you see when I hover over that, it allows me to extend that by clicking on it, and it extends to that line there. Enter to finish. We're then going to zoom out slightly by rolling back on the wheel. Make sure that you can see all of the wall, doing a bit of zooming and panning like that. We're then going to use Match Properties. So Match Properties is up here on the Properties panel. Click on Match Properties, and what you want to do is pick one of the olive lines here, one of these, as your source object. So get the pick box over it, it will highlight, left click, and then select this spline, and the little line you created there, and then Enter to finish. So your destination objects are now on the right layer, and they're on the same layer as the internal walls. But what you've done is you've created a little boundary here, a little barrier that kind of blocks off the main corridor here where the stairs are from the little atrium seating area and the opening of your floor plan, like so. So people come in the main doors here, see our new tables, walk through, and you can see there's a little bit of a sort of barrier there that you've created using a spline. So what we'll do, we'll unpin our little draw panel here. That floats back into the ribbon, and you've now created a polyline, a polygon, and some splines as well. Once again, we're staying in our geometry.dwg file, and you'll notice this time the floor plan is fully zoomed out so that we can see the overall floor plan. We can see the dimensions, the grid lines, all the tables that we've created. We can see the spline barrier that we've created there in the middle section of the floor plan as well. So how did I get back to that from the previous view that we had in the previous video? Well, it's very simple. We use the zooming and panning controls in AutoCAD. Now, you've seen me use those a little bit already, and I've explained that you roll up and down on the wheel of the mouse to zoom in and zoom out, and you press the wheel down as a button, the hand appears, and you can obviously pan like I'm doing now. Now, one of the benefits you've got with the crosshair, the cursor, as you move it around, is if you position it near an object, let's say one of our new tables here. If I position it there and roll up on the wheel, I'm zooming in. And then if I roll back on the wheel, I'm zooming out. So let's do that. Let's go towards the hexagon there, and I'll put it right in the middle of the hexagon, roll up on the wheel, and you can see that it's using where the crosshair is over the hexagon as the center, the pivot point of the zoom. Then I can obviously stop doing that and press down on the wheel as a button. There's the hand, and I can pan upwards a little bit so that I can see everything in the view that I need to see, my two new tables in this case. Now that's great. What I can also do though is just double click on the wheel of the mouse. That will zoom me back out to that overall view. It's known as zoom extents, and it zooms to the extent of the visible drawn objects in the drawing. So that's the quick and easy way to get around using your mouse. Use the wheel, roll up on the wheel to zoom in, roll back on the wheel to zoom out. You can also double click on the wheel to zoom to the extent and hold down the wheel to pan, like so. Now there are other ways of zooming and panning in AutoCAD as well though. If I simply right click with no command selected, no object selected, you'll notice I have pan and zoom here on the shortcut menu. So if I select pan now, I'm now in pan, but notice the hand symbol is open. If I left click and hold, I'm then gripping the drawing and I can pan. When I release the mouse button again, the hand opens again as if to say you're not panning anymore because you're not holding onto the drawing to move it. I can then right click and a shortcut menu appears. So I can now go down to something like zoom. Now we're not going to do 3D orbit because we're not in a 3D drawing. So I'm just going to click on zoom for now. And a magnifying glass appears. I hold down the left hand mouse button and move up to zoom in. And if I come down holding the mouse button, can you see the little plus and minus appear next to the magnifying glass? So as I move upwards with the mouse button held down, that's the left hand mouse button, it's a plus sign because I'm zooming in, it's making it bigger. If I come back down again, the minus sign, and I'm making it smaller. And again, when I release the mouse button, just goes back to the magnifying glass. I can right click again, and on that shortcut menu, which is the pan and zoom shortcut menu, I can do a zoom window. So I'll select zoom window this time. And what I can do now, I've got a little magnifying glass with a window. I can click, hold down the mouse button again and drag, and you'll see a shape appear like that. That's the window that I'm going to zoom into, and when I release the mouse button, it zooms into that area. I've still got the magnifying glass going. I'm still in the zoom and pan, the real-time zoom, real-time pan. If I right-click now, I can zoom to the original view, or I can zoom to the extents. If I zoom to the extents, we're back there again. I can right-click and exit the real-time zoom and real-time pan. One more way of zooming and panning is over here on the navigation bar. Now, if that's not available on your screen, you just type nav bar like that. And you'll see that there's an option there, nav bar display. Click on that variable there, and it should be set to 1. If it's set to 0, watch what happens to the nav bar. It disappears. If I type nav bar again and click on nav bar display and set it to 1, it then appears on the right hand side of the screen there. And just there on that little flyout menu there, I've got all different zoom tools available, like zoom window there. So if I do zoom window again and I click, and this time you release the mouse button after clicking and just drag the window to where you want it to go and click again. And it zooms you in to the extents of that window. Again, on the nav bar here, I can come over to zoom and I can say that I want to zoom extents. And it will bring me back to that overall view again, where I'm zooming to the extents of the visible drawn objects. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on zooming and panning. There's lots of different ways of getting around your AutoCAD drawings. I've given you some of the basic ones there. If you want to investigate further ones on the navigation bar, for example, that I've just shown you, you can. But those are the main ones that you would normally use to navigate your AutoCAD drawings. We're starting a new chapter now in our Learning AutoCAD course. And we're going to take a quick look at how we create what is called annotation in our AutoCAD drawings. Now, for that reason, we've got a new drawing. It's called annotation.dwg, and you can download it from the library to follow along with the videos in this particular chapter. When you open up the drawing, you'll notice that our tables that we've created previously and our little curvy spline wall are in this particular drawing, so that you know that you're in the right drawing. Now, we're looking at annotation, and one of the first things we need to think about when we're looking at annotation is how do we use that annotation, our text, our dimensions, our labels, to communicate our design intent. We need to make sure that people know what's what in our drawings. So we need to ideally have some labels in our drawings. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and you'll notice some of the rooms already have labels. Can you see that there? There's some little bits of text there like EL4, WS001 and so on. And those particular pieces of text have come through from this drawing being created by another piece of software and perhaps been imported into AutoCAD. So they've come through with the original drawing and have kind of been left there. We need to create our own labels now and put our own annotation on the drawing itself. We need two things. We need a layer to put the text on, and we also need what is called a text style. So let's look at that. Go to the Home tab on the ribbon, and in the Layers panel, click on Layer Properties. And you can see there's all our different layers here, like so. And if I come down the list, you can see at the moment with the little green tick, that's our furniture layer that we've been using up until now. Now, if you scroll down towards the bottom of the list, you'll see some layers that begin with Z, like so. So we've got our grid references, our grid numbers. There's also a text layer there, like so, that layer right there. So what we're going to do, we're going to utilize Z000T text for our text in our drawings, for our text labels. But we're going to change the color of it. Right now, I've got a color 131. Click on that little box there where the little pale blue color is and go to the Index Color tab in the dialog box. These are your AutoCAD index colors. There is also True Color and Color Books. We're just going to use index colors. There's loads of different colors to choose from. And I'd like you to select this one here, Index Color 1. When you click on it, it will say red. It's one of the old original AutoCAD colors, way back when we used to use pen plotters and things. But the idea is I want you to use red, that color right there. So that little box there, Index Color 1. I could just type in 1 as the number of the color and click on OK, and that will still say red in the Layer Properties Manager. Now we need to make our text layer our current drafting layer. We can just go up to the little green tick here in the Layer Properties Manager. A little tick appears next to the layer. Close the Layer Properties Manager by clicking on the cross, and you can see now that our text layer is our current drafting layer. So when I place some text now, it will go onto that text layer. Now that's one piece set up. What we need to do now is set up the other piece, which is our text style. So we're going to go up to Annotation here on the Home tab on the ribbon and click on the flyout and pin it open like we've done with previous ribbon panels. So you'll notice we've got text style, dimension style, multi-leader style, table style. We do cover some of that in this Learning AutoCAD course, but as I've already said, if you go and do the AutoCAD Essential Training course after this course, you can dive deeper into all of this sort of functionality. I need you to click on the A with the paintbrush for text style. And we're going to create our own text style to go in this particular drawing. Now, I have a particular naming philosophy for text styles. So we're going to click on New over here, and it'll ask for a style name. Now I'm going to call it labels, like that. So I'm just going to type labels, and then underscore, like so. And then I'm going to put model. I'm only going to use this in the model tab. So you'll notice bottom left corner down here, can you see model just there? Well, that's where this particular text style will be used. You'll see why later on in the course. And then I'm going to put another underscore, and I'm going to define the height of the label text, which in my case, I'm working in millimeters, 250, and then I'm going to put a little to represent millimeters. When I click on OK, my text style is in the list, labels, model space, 250 millimeters. I click there like so. When it's blue, I know that any of these parameters that I'm changing here are getting changed for that text style. Notice there is not a little blue symbol next to it. It is not an annotative text style in this case. You can set it to be annotative, but I'm not going to. Now, I'm going to change the font name. Little trick here. When you click on a big, long flyout like this, can you see we've got loads of different TrueType fonts? That's because we're looking at all of the Windows fonts that I can use in the Windows operating system. If I press the C key, it takes me, you'll notice, at the top of the list there to Calibri. And that's the first one that starts with C. So I'm going to select Calibri at the top of the list. And can you see there my font name is now Calibri? I'm using the Calibri font. There's a little preview of it there. And I'm using the font style regular. That's fine. I need to give it a height though. I'm going to give it a height of 250 millimeters. That then ties in with the naming of the text style. Now you can set some effects. You can have it upside down, you can have it backwards, and so on. You can change the width factor, the oblique angle if you want to. Don't do that in this case. You don't need any effects at all. Leave the width factor at 1, leave the oblique angle at 0. Click on apply, and it will apply those changes to your labels model 250 millimeters text style. We then set that as our current text style over here by clicking on set current, and you'll notice there's no OK button. You just click on close. We can then unpin. Now, just before we unpin the annotation panel there, notice labels model 250 millimeters is now our current text style. If I click on that flyout there, there's all our different text styles available in the drawing. There's labels there, that's the one we want. Click on it and just unpin the annotation panel and it pops back into the ribbon. So that's our text style and our text layer all set up and ready to go to place some annotation text in our drawing. In the previous video, we looked at setting up a layer to put our text annotation onto, and we also set up a text style to use with that particular text layer. Now, we're in the drawing, annotation.dwg. This is the drawing that we're using for this particular chapter. And what we're going to do now is utilize that layer and that text style to place some text labels on our drawing, to communicate the information in our drawing to others. So let's make sure that we're on the right layer. So Home tab on the ribbon. In the Layers panel, you should be using the Z000T text layer. If you're not, click on the flyout, pop down here, find the layer. You can see it, it's red, Z30T text, that one there. Remember, we changed the color of it so that it stood out, so that it was red. Then we also need to be using the appropriate text style. Jump onto the annotation flyout here on the annotation panel. Make sure that your text style there reads labels model 250 millimeters. If it doesn't, click there, select labels model 250 millimeters. That way you're using the right text style as well. Now, using zooming and panning, we're going to zoom and pan to the area where we created the new tables previously. So there's our little spline wall that we created. There's our new tables there. And we're going to pan upwards a little bit because we want to place some text sort of in this area here. And the text is basically going to say reception area. Now, we're going to use single line text for that. So we go up to the annotation panel here on the Home tab on the ribbon, click on the flyout there and select single line. And that will display text on screen as it's entered, and it creates one line of text, which becomes one object. So I'm going to come in here now. I'm going to place my text here in this space here. You can place it down here towards the doors. It's up to you where you place it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You can do that in the middle of a command, and pan as well, like so. And I'm going to pick a point, roughly speaking, left click there, like that. And then it will prompt me for the rotation angle of my text. Now, by default, 0 degrees is going to the east, to the right, which is where we want our text to go. We normally write text left to right, yes? So the trick is just to press enter to accept that 0 for the rotation angle. And there's our little cursor flashing at us like so. So using caps, make sure that your caps lock is on. I'm going to type in reception. So it's RECEPTION, reception. And obviously you can use the arrow keys if you put an extra R, like I have there. So there's reception. Using the arrow keys, I'll just move that back, space, and then AREA, reception area. Press enter once, and then enter twice. Because there's no text on that next line down, it will close out, obviously, the single line text command. If I click on that text now, can you see we've got a little grip there? That's the default left grip. If I click on that grip, goes red, click on it, it goes a deeper red, and I can just move the text around. I'm going to move it up a little bit and click there. Hit escape to deselect it, and when I zoom out slightly, you can see now I've got a label telling me that that is the reception area. Very quick and easy to create single line text like that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do the same again. Take your caps lock off though this time. And what we're going to do, we're going to zoom in on this area near the restrooms here. So we're going to zoom in, maybe pan down just a little bit like that. And you can see there's a nice little rectangular area here. And what we're going to do, we're going to place some multi-line text just underneath the restrooms, just to say men and women's restrooms. So we've got the text layer, we've got the text style. We need to click on the text flyout and select multi-line text, which is mtext is the command we're going to use. Now this time it's a bit different. You'll see that it's asking to specify the first corner. Now you can see a little ABC there. That is a preview of what your text is going to look like. And you'll have noticed that AutoCAD hasn't prompted you for any text heights. That's because we defined the height in the text style. So our labels model 250mm text style has that height of 250 already. We don't have to specify it. So I'm going to pick a point about here, left click, drag across as if I'm placing a rectangle to about there, left click again. Now you'll notice as soon as you do this, everything changes and it all gets a bit weird. Don't panic. You've gone into one of the contextual ribbon tabs known as you can see in the blue here, text editor. So the text editor basically is, in essence, Microsoft Word in AutoCAD. You've got things like bullets and numbering, line spacing, justification, you things like bold, italic, underline, and so on. We're not going to worry about any of those changes at all. We're just going to click in the little editing area that's appeared here. Can you see where the cursor is? And it's flashing. Just left click there. And we're going to type restrooms, but this time no caps. So restrooms, like that, and then space dash space, men and women, like that. So restrooms, men and women, or restrooms, men, restrooms, women. It's up to you. But that's multi-line text. So when I go up here to close the text editor, I can click on the green tick, or I can just click in a space away from the text, and there's my text there. But because it's multi-line text, I can click on it, and you can see I've got some little arrow grips there. So if I click on this little arrow grip and drag, can you see there? I can change that and the text looks different because I'm changing that little rectangle kind of area that I set up for the text. So I can change it to restrooms, men and women like that. Click again and it's resized it accordingly. I can then, if I want to, click on this square grip, change the mtext location, say up to there. So I can go restrooms, men and women, say there, click there, and it's placed it in that space there. If I hit escape to deselect, the text is now placed and resized so that people know that they're the restrooms in the building, like so. Now, if I want to edit that multi-line text or the single line text here, there's the reception area text there. It's just a case of hovering over it. It goes sort of highlighted, a little bit grainy, double click on it. That will allow me to edit the text. So I might want to lose the men and women bit. Let's lose that. Just highlight it, use the backspace key on the keyboard, go back a few steps, and then just click away from the text. That edits accordingly. Same with reception area. Hover over it, it goes grainy, double click on it, and you can click in that area and use the arrow keys to move around. There you go, reception area like so. And I'll lose the area bit of that now, using the backspace, and just click away from the text and it updates. If you're editing single line text, it will prompt you for another annotation object. Just press enter another time to close down the edit like so. So you've got now multi-line text and single line text in your AutoCAD drawing. Once again, we're staying in the annotation.dwg file, and you'll notice I've zoomed to the extents of the visible drawn objects in the drawing. That's a simple double click on the mouse wheel on your mouse. So if you're zoomed in like this, just double click on the mouse wheel, and there you go, it zooms to extents like that. Now the reason I've done that is I want to start thinking now about placing dimensions on our AutoCAD drawing. Now you'll notice that our grid lines have already got some dimensions. You can see them here. there's dimensions here like so. And you can see they're on a particular layer. So if I hover over one, you can see it's the A010D dim layer. So before we do anything else, we need to make sure that we're on the appropriate layer to place our dimension annotation on the drawing itself. Now, you'll notice we're on the text layer in the Layers panel. Now, what I can do here is, because we're going to be placing dimensions, we can start thinking about using the Annotate tab here, like so. I can go to the Annotation panel here and click it out there, and I can set up my dimension style there if I want to. We're going to go to the Annotate tab on the ribbon. Now, you'll notice here we've got lots of different annotation tools, and we've got a Dimensions panel right here. Now, these little arrows in the corner allow me to go to Text Style, Dimension Style. You've also got Multi-Leader Style there, and you've also got your table styles there as well, like that. So you can do all of this from a different location in the ribbon, in the Annotate tab. But you'll also notice here in the Dimensions panel, we've got Dim Layer Override. And I've already got that set, so if I place any dimensions, it'll override my existing drafting layer in the Home tab, which is the text layer there. So in the Annotate tab, AutoCAD already knows I'm going to be using that dim layer to place any dimensions. So what we're going to do is work from the Annotate tab. So Annotate tab on the ribbon, Dimensions panel here, click on the little arrow. That'll open up our Dimension Style Manager. We're going to create a new dimension style, and it's going to be an annotative dimension style. And I'll explain that later when we work in the drawing later. Now, what we need to do first of all is click on New and give our dimension style a name. Now, I'm going to create a really simple dimension style name here. It's just going to be called Training, because we're training how to use AutoCAD. And then I'm going to put a dash, and then I'm going to put Anno in capital letters like that. Training Anno. Now, the reason that I'm going to call it Training Anno is we're training to use AutoCAD, and Anno stands for annotative. So make sure that this annotative box here is ticked. And we're going to start with just our standard dimension style, which you'll notice isn't annotative. So we need to tick the box again. And we're going to use it for all dimensions. So just all different dimensions, linear, radius, diameter, etc. So training style Anno, start with standard, tick the annotative box, all dimensions. When you click on continue, in a similar fashion to the text style that we created earlier, you can see now that as we start working through this, we're going to start developing the style like so, and then we'll have a listing here, Training Anno, once we've finished, just like our text styles. Now, there's a lot to do here with the dimension style, so we're going to work through it all reasonably quickly. Now, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we set all of the settings in each of these tabs correctly. So start with lines. Dimension lines are these lines here, the vertical lines you can see, and also aligned lines and so on. And we want all of these to be by layer. Now, the reason we want all of these to be by layer is we want them to adopt the properties of the layer that the dimension is placed on, that DIMS layer here, the one up here in the Dimensions panel. So we want to make sure that it's obviously picking that information up. So that should all be set to by layer. Baseline spacing, just set that to 10 millimeters in this case. We're working with a metric millimeters dimension style in this case. Extension lines by layer, and again, all of these need to be set to by layer. Now, if you jump into the AutoCAD Essential Training course after this Learning AutoCAD course, we go into dimensioning in a lot more detail. So you'll understand a lot more about what all these settings do. Now, we're going to extend beyond dimension lines there. That's going to be 2.5 millimeters. And then the offset from the origin there is going to be 4 millimeters. Now, if I put the values in and tab, can you see it's all starting to look a bit weird? Don't worry about that at all. We'll figure all of that out as we go. So we're going to go to symbols and arrows now, the tab at the top. We've got closed filled arrowheads. We're going to change these to architectural ticks, and you'll see the second one updates accordingly. If we place any leaders, we're going to use a dot, like so. And again, if you go to the AutoCAD Essential Training course, we go into all of the leader lines, multi-leaders, and dimensioning a lot more. Arrow size, that's going to be 3.5 millimeters in size. And when you press tab, you'll see things start to look a bit weird in the preview over here. Don't worry about that at all. That'll all come out in the wash. Center marks, we're going to set that to none. Our break size here, 3.75 millimeters. Arc length symbol proceeding, jog angle 45 degrees, jog height factor 1.5 times text height. Now, when we move to the text tab, this is where we have to set up a new text style for our dimension style. At the moment, it's using the standard text style. I can click on this little ellipsis button here. It opens up the text style dialog box. That's kind of handy. I can now click on new, and I can create a new text style, and I'm going to call it dims and then underscore model. I'm not going to give it a height this time. You don't want to give a text style that you're using for annotative dimensions a height. So just dims model is good. Click on OK. There's dims model there. I'm going to click there, and again I'm going to use that C, press the C on the keyboard. There's Calibri right there on the list. Font style regular, height 0, and we don't want it annotative either. Just leave that height at 0 there. Basically what that means is it allows the dimension style to set the text height. We don't need any effects, so we apply and we just close this time. And then here, drop down, there's my dims model like that. So we're using the dims model. Text color, again, by layer. Fill color, we're not going to have a fill color, but the text height itself, that's going to be 3.5 millimeters again. And when I tab now, can you see everything's starting to come out in the wash? It's beginning to look a lot more sensible. I can draw a frame around the text in the dimensions if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. Text placement, vertically, it's centered. Can you see that on each of the dimensions? Horizontally, though, I want that over an extension line or near an extension line like that. No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it above the dimension line like that. Can you see? And I'm going to set that back to just centered. And can you see everything starting to look a lot more sensible? View direction left to right is important. If you go right to left, it flips everything. Just be aware of that. And the offset from the dim line is going to be 1.25 millimeters above the dim line. And can you see everything starts to look really sensible now in the preview here? Text alignment, I tend to use aligned with dimension line. It's just a little bit more sort of satisfactory in how it looks. If you go for ISO standard, there you'll notice that the radius there has its own little horizontal cranked line. It's up to you if you want to use that. So you can see there that we've got a dimension style that looks a bit more sensible now. I'm going to go to the Fit tab. All of this you can leave exactly as it is. You don't need to change anything here at all. Just make sure that annotative is ticked. Primary units are going to be decimal, as you can see with a decimal place there. Precision, I'm going to change that to 2 decimal places. And the decimal separator will be a period. You can use a comma or a space, depends on what standard you're working to and what localized country standard you might be using as well. I'm going to use period there like so. I'm not going to round off to any values. I am going to put 0 suppression on for any exact length values. I'm also, with the decimal degrees, going to set the precision to 2 decimal places. There's our exact 60 degrees. As soon as I put the trailing 0 suppression on, it loses the .00 after the decimal place there, purely because obviously it's a trailing 0 and it's exactly 60 degrees. Alternate units, I'm not going to switch any on, but if I did switch them on, you can see here if I went to something like architectural in AutoCAD, I've now got, if you look really closely there, a metric and an imperial setting. Now I'm going to switch that off. I don't want alternate units, I just want metric millimeters in this case. And tolerances, again, method is set to none, but if I was going to use something like limits, you can see there if I went for limits or deviation, it's plus or minus a particular value with the upper value and the lower value. Tolerance format in this case though, none. So we just make sure with primary units they're all set, we make sure with alternate units they're unticked, we make sure that tolerances are set to none. Click on OK, and we now have our training anno there like so. And all I've got to do is select that, set current, and close. And we now have a dimension style all set up, ready to go onto that dim layer, as you can see in the dimensions panel at the top of your AutoCAD screen. We're staying in our annotation.dwg file, and you can see that I've done a zoom extents to zoom to the extents of the visible drawn objects. In the previous video, we set up our dimension style, and we also set up the dim layer override here in the dimensions panel in the annotate tab on the ribbon. So your dim layer override should be reading A010D dim. That particular layer there will be used for all dimensions. We should also be using the dimension style that we set up, training anno. So you can see there when I click on that little flyout, there's all my differing dimension styles. Training anno is the one right down at the end. So use the little slider bar and jump in there, training anno. And you'll see it's got that little blue symbol next to it, letting us know that it is an annotative dimension style. I'll explain annotative in the next chapter of the course. Now, what we need to think about is placing our dimension annotation on our drawing. Now, before we do that, we need to think about what is known as an annotation scale. Now, this is set up in the Model tab. You'll notice we are in the Model tab there, like so. And it's set up down here in the status bar. So if I click where it says 1 to 1, you can see I've got all these differing annotation scales. Just leave it set at 1 to 1 for the moment, because I want to show you how this works. And then using zoom and pan, just pan downwards a little bit and zoom in on this top left corner of the floor plan. So you've got the grid 1, the grid 1.1 and the grid 2. We're going to remove this 457 existing dimension by clicking on it, right click, erase. We'll do the same with this dimension here. Click on it to select it, right click and erase again like so. Now the reason I've erased those two is I want to place two new linear dimensions there using my new dimension style and obviously the appropriate dimension layer. Now, just before we place those linear dimensions, remember that we've set our annotation scale there to 1 to 1. So when I go and place a linear dimension, which is on the dimensions panel here, there you go, click on that flyout, there's linear. So I'll get this prompt. You're creating an annotative object. Set the annotation scale to the scale at which the annotation is intended to display. Now, the reason it's asking me that is because I'm using the default 1 to 1, and you'll probably get this prompt as well, because by default, your annotation scale is always at 1 to 1 until you change it to work with other annotation scales. Leave it at 1 to 1 and just click on OK. You'll now be prompted for the first extension line origin. Now, we're going to use our object snaps for this, and we're going to use where the line, the grid line, intersects the bubble. So you should get an intersection like that. Left click on the intersection, come across to this intersection here, left click again. There's our dimension, and then we're going to go down here and you'll see an endpoint snap on that arrowhead there, left click. Now you're looking at that and you're thinking my dimension doesn't look quite right at all there, and it doesn't because we're using an annotation scale of 1 to 1, which means everything is actual size. So the text on my dimension is that 3.5 millimeters that we set in the dimension style earlier. If you zoom in real close on the middle of the dimension, look, there's my dimension right there. And it's really tiny. It's only 3.5 millimeters on an actual full-size building in millimeters in the model space in AutoCAD. So just double click on the wheel of the mouse to zoom extents like so. Click on the dimension you've just placed, which is there like that. Right click and erase. Using zoom and pan again, we'll zoom and pan on that top left corner and we'll come in there like that. Now, if I hover over this dimension here, can you see it's also annotative? The little annotative symbol appears near the crosshair. So that particular dimension is annotative, but it's using a different annotation scale. So come down to your status bar and set the scale to 1 to 100. So what that means now is that it's going to be 100 times bigger because it needs to go in a scaled viewport when you're using annotative scaling of 1 to 100. I'll explain annotative scaling in the next chapter. You'll get all of this later. I'm showing you how to set it all up. So we now go back to our dimensions panel here in the annotate tab on the ribbon. Click on the flyout and select linear. Now, if I do the same workflow again, so intersection here, left click, intersection here, left click, and if I come down to that endpoint there and click, there's my dimension placed with my dimension style. You can see it's using a different font. It's using the Calibri font. And you can see it's got the architectural ticks in there as well. So that's using the appropriate dimension style. Now let's do that one more time. Let's go back to linear again. So click on the flyout, select linear, and I'll do this intersection here. You might get an endpoint possibly. And again there, and click there. And as I come away, I can line in with the intersection there and click there. And there's my 457 as well. Now you'll notice that I'm getting 457.2, 9601.2. That's because my particular dimension style has a different setting to this dimension style over here. But now it's 100 times bigger because I've set the annotation scale to 1 to 100. That annotation scale is really important. So make sure for any dimensions you place in this annotation.dwg file, you use that 1 to 100 annotation scale. Now, if I want to lose those decimal places, I can quickly edit the dimension style. So I can jump in here and click on the arrow. There's training anno there, and I'll just click on modify. What I'll do now is I'll go to primary units and I'll just change that precision there to no decimal places. Click on OK. Click on close and you'll see it updates accordingly. So I've got no decimal places in that dimension style anymore. Very quick and easy to set up, very quick and easy to change. So if I zoom out slightly now, you can see I've got a slightly different dimension style, but you can see how I can place my dimensions. What I'd like you to do after completing this particular video is have a little play around now placing different types of dimensions from this drop down here on the dimensions panel on the annotate tab on the ribbon. Have a go at some diameter, some radius, and just see how you get along with the different dimension types in your AutoCAD drawings. We're staying in our annotation.dwg file, and we're going to take a look at another type of annotation that you can put into your AutoCAD drawings. So I'm currently in the model tab. You can see that there, bottom left, and I'm zoomed out to the extent of my visible drawn objects in my floor plan. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a simple table style. So we're going to go to the annotate tab on the ribbon, into the tables panel, and click here on the little arrow. That'll open up the table style dialog box. Click on new, and what we're going to do there is we're going to give this a new style name of just training. That's fine for now. It's not going to be annotative or anything like that, and click on continue. So what we need to do now is set up a table style. So we go to our little drop down here and we select title first. So in the preview, we're working downwards, title, header, data. So select title first, click on the general tab. The fill color, we're going to set that to white, like so. The alignment is going to be middle center, format general, type label. Change the margins here to 25. So just tab between them, 25 each like that. Everything will start getting a bit weird on the preview. Don't worry. Click on text now. Text style, we're going to go for the DIMS model text style that we set up previously. Text height, we're going to go for 250. Text color by layer. So it looks like we've just got a title cell in the table at the moment. Don't worry about that. Borders, all of these can just be left as they are. So we now go to the drop down again and select header. Same workflow. General tab, fill color, we're going to set that to white as well. Alignment, middle center, general label, margins, again 25 for each, horizontal and vertical like that. And then text tab, text style, again we'll use the DIMS model for now. Text height, we'll say that that's going to be 200. Text color by layer. So you can see the different text heights in the preview now. Borders, again you can leave those as they are. Last but not least, we go to the drop down again and set data. We click on the general tab, fill color, none this time. Alignment for data always defaults to top center. I always change that to middle center so it tallies up with the title and the headers there. Again, general, but this time data. Margins, remember, 25 horizontally, 25 vertically. and you can start seeing the little data cells appearing in the table. Click on the text tab there. Again, we want the DIMS model text style. Text type, we're going to go for 150 this time. And bear in mind, these are all millimeters full size in the model tab, because we're using a metric millimeters drawing. If you were working in inches or feet or something, this might be different. Text color there, again, we're going to go with by layer. Text angle 0 for all of them to keep them horizontal, obviously. That's the same for title, header, and data. So we've got everything set up. The borders can stay as they are. Click on OK, and we've now got our new table style. So I'm going to click on training, set it as the current style by clicking on set current, and close. So now I can go to the table command here and place an empty table object. But what I want to do is make sure I'm using the right layer first. So if I go to the Home tab on the ribbon and go over here to the Annotation panel here, click on the flyout, just check down here that my table style is set to training. There it is there, training. So we've got standard and training. There's the training one right there. And we want to make sure that we're on the text layer, which we are. That's our default layer. Remember, in the Annotate tab, that's our dim layer override layer. So Home tab on the ribbon, layer panel there, and it's the text layer. The good thing is I can go to the Annotation panel here on the Home tab on the ribbon and just click on Table. My style is already set. There it is there, Table Style Training. So I'm going to start from an empty table, leave the preview on. I don't know why there's a tick box to switch it off. It's always good to have a preview to see what you're placing. So column and row settings, we're going to have 2 columns with a column width of 1500, 2 data rows with a row height of 1 line each. We'll just stick with the set cell styles of title, header, data. And we're going to specify an insertion point. If you specify a window, it will fit the table to the window. I'm going to click on OK now. And there's my little table there. I'm just going to place it up near the top left corner and click like that. And as soon as I do that, can you see it's prompting me now with the text editor tab to start adding text to my table. Now, ideally, I want to zoom in to do that. So just click away from the table and it places the table and closes the text editor contextual ribbon tab. Let's zoom in on the table so that we can see what we're doing. Use zoom and pan by way of the mouse and double click in the top cell. So when I double click in there, can you see I've got a cursor now? So this will be my table, like so. And then if I just use the tab keys or the arrow keys, I can go to the first header there, which will be, let's say, header 1, like so. I can tab across, that will be header 2. Now, obviously, these would obviously make a lot more sense if they were actually physical names, but I'm just showing you by way of the text what is going to go into an AutoCAD table. If I keep tabbing now, it just tabs me between the cells, just like an Excel spreadsheet. So header 1 there, I might have something like data H1-1, like so. Tab across, that will then be data again, and that will be H2-1. And you can see where I'm going with the numbering here. So this one then, using the down arrow key, data, and that again will be H2-2. And then using the left-hand arrow key, I can go across like that. Or I can just, if I want to, just double click in a cell as well. So if I double click there, I can do that. And you can see there that that then becomes data. And again, these are just text. I'm not worried about what's actually going on with the table itself. Click away. So there's some text in a table. Now, you can bring data and extract data from objects in the drawing, bring it into tables as well. If you do the AutoCAD Essential Training course, we go into tables in a lot more detail. But you can see how quick and easy it is to set up a table style and drop that table into a drawing to add data into the table so that you can use it for various uses within your floor plan. We're starting another chapter now in our Learning AutoCAD course, and we're going to start talking about how we can communicate our design intent to others by way of creating title blocks and layout tabs and page setups so that we can then print and plot our drawings to perhaps a PDF file format to send to some stakeholders on a project that we might be working on. So we've got a new drawing for you. It's called communication.dwg. And what we're going to do is allow you to obviously download that from the library and use it to follow along with these particular videos in this particular chapter. You will recognize the drawing. It's basically a copy of what we did in the last chapter, and it's been saved out and renamed as communication.dwg. So download it from the library to follow along with the videos. Now, the first thing we're going to do is create a simple title block for use in our layout tabs. So you'll notice down here, bottom left, we have an ISO A1 landscape layout tab. Now that layout tab is where we're going to set up our basic title block and some viewports so that we can communicate our design and ship it out as a PDF file to somebody. So the first thing we're going to do is change our layer. So home tab on the ribbon, we're going to go to the layer drop down in the layers panel. If you come down towards the bottom, you can see we've got title block and title text there, like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to title block and click on it to make it the current drafting layer. And what we're going to do, we're going to zoom in on an area perhaps near the table here, top left. So I'm going to come in here like this, pick a spot about there like that. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to go up to the draw panel, click on the rectangle command there, like so, click and drag like that. And I want to make a rectangle that is 841 in that distance there. Press the tab key and then 594 in the vertical direction. Press the tab key again. And you'll see you get this little rectangle there appear like so. Press enter. That is the size of an A1 sheet of paper that you would normally put a drawing on. So as you can see, we need to do some scaling to get our floor plan onto that sheet of paper. Zoom in onto the rectangle like so. So there's our simple rectangle. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the offset command in the modify panel on the home tab on the ribbon. So there we go. There's our offset command there. I click on offset like so, come into the drawing area, and I'm going to specify an offset distance of 15, 1, 5, like so. And then I'm going to press enter. And then using the pick box, I'm going to select the rectangle I've created, move inside the rectangle, not outside. So you'll notice the rectangle that has been selected is like a purple color. Come inside, the orange line should be inside for the title block. Click again and then enter to close the offset command. You need to offset inside because the original rectangle is the edges of your sheet of paper. So what we're going to do now, we're going to put some simple text onto the drawing as well. We're just going to put something like, I don't know, plan view would be a good thing, I suppose. So we're going to jump up to the annotation panel here, and we're going to click on text style, and we can utilize something like our labels model 250mm one there. So if I click on that and then click on new, and what we're going to do is we're going to call it title, and then underscore, and then layout, and then underscore again, and 10mm, and then click on OK. So you can see it's title layout 10mm. We'll keep the calibri, we'll change the height to 10, that's really important, and then the font style, we'll make it bold italic, like so. So it's a bit different. So title layout 10mm, font name calibri, bold italic, 10 in the height. Apply it, and then select set current, and then close. We're then going to change our layer here on the layer drop down, and we're going to use title text. And then what we're going to do, we're going to zoom in on the bottom left corner of our title block, go to the annotation panel and click on the flyout here and select single line text. I'm then going to right click and select justify, and then I'm going to use left as my justify option. It should be left anyway, that's the default, but just to make sure. Start point of the text, I'm going to pick a point here like so, and then it'll ask for the rotation angle, but it won't ask for the height. Remember, the height is in the text style. So I press enter to accept the 0 rotation angle of the text, and there's my little flashing cursor. So what we'll do here is we'll say that this is ground floor, like so. Maybe put a dash in there, and then we'll say that this is a plan view, like that. Enter once, and then enter twice to close the single line text command. So when I zoom out again now, you can see that we've got a very simple title block available to us. So that title block now needs to go into our layout tab with a page setup. And we're going to look at that in the next video. We're staying in our communication.dwg file, and what we're going to do now is set up a page setup in AutoCAD so that we can actually physically plot our drawing. Now, at the moment, we're in the Model tab, so you can see we're in Model down here, bottom left. And we need to take our title block that we've created with these rectangles and this piece of text into the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab. So, first thing we need to do is select all of the objects that we're going to take into the Layout tab. So, we're going to select the rectangle there, and the piece of text there, like so. And then it's just a case of right-click and hover over clipboard here and select Copy with Base Point. So we need Copy with Base Point, that one there, like so. Left-click. It will then prompt you for a base point. Now you'll see all these little blue squares appear when you select objects. They're known as grips. You need to go to the bottom left grip and just hover over it. Ignore the dimensions that appear and the little stretch vertex, add vertex, remove vertex menu. Just left click once on that grip where it's highlighted with the little green box around it. Left click. And you'll see that it says copy base, and it should have 3 found show up on the command line at the bottom of the screen there. Now, the command line is where you input data normally, and it gives you little prompts as you go. So keep an eye out on that command line sometimes, especially for that one, because it's just letting you know that you've done a copy base to the clipboard and 3 objects are now on the clipboard waiting to be copied elsewhere. Hit escape a couple of times just to deselect the objects, and then double click on the wheel of your mouse to zoom extents. Now, you don't actually need that title block over there anymore, but we'll leave it there for the moment just in case anything goes wrong. Click on the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab, this one here, and you'll see what looks like a piece of paper. What you'll also see is this funny grey box with your floor plan in it. That is known as a viewport. So what we're going to do, we're going to click on it, and we're actually going to delete that viewport. So it's a right click and erase. Don't worry that it's disappeared. That's absolutely fine. We're going to put some new viewports in a little while. What we do need to do is right click again and select clipboard and go to paste. That's all we need, paste. And then when you come in, can you see your title block is now hanging on the crosshair, waiting for an insertion point. Now, sometimes AutoCAD will not allow you to paste from that shortcut menu. So you'll go to clipboard and the paste will be grayed out. If it is, use Control and V to paste using the keyboard shortcut Control and V. That way, it'll bring it in the same way as it is now. Now, we're going to set an insertion point and we're just going to type 0, then press the comma key, and then 0 again, as if we're typing the coordinate 0, 0. Press enter to confirm. Now, as soon as you do that, if you zoom out slightly, you might notice that your title block is not in the right place. No problem at all there. We now need to set up a page setup to make sure that our title block and our sheet of paper align. So we're going to right click on the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab. We go to Page Setup Manager, and you'll notice there's already an ISO A1 Landscape PDF High Res Layout tab page setup there. So our current layout is ISO A1 Landscape, which is there. And in brackets, it's already using a page setup that's already built into the drawing. Now, you can create your own page setups, no problem at all. What we're going to do is we're going to basically select this one, and we're going to right click on it, and we're going to delete it like so. We don't need it. We're going to create a new one. And notice there it's taken away from the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab. Click on New, and we're going to give a similar name. It's going to be ISO A1, which is the sheet size. And then we're going to go metric, like so, and then a dash, and then we're going to go PDF, and then high res, so HIRES. And then you might put possibly another dash and then landscape in capitals so that you know the sheet orientation. Make sure you spell it right, unlike me, I'm not that great at keyboard sometimes. So ISO A1, metric, PDF high res, landscape. Click on OK. So we now need to set our printer and plotter. So we're going to go for that high quality AutoCAD PDF there. Paper size, we need an ISO A1 841 by 594. So there's lots of different sheet sizes in here, American, British, inches, millimeters, etc. So if I come down the list here, we've got lots of full bleed ones here. We've got expand ones as well. Now we're going to use an expand 841 by 594, that one there. ISO expand 841 by 594. Now the reason we're using that is because it means that our printer limits go nearly to the edge of the paper, which means our little sort of title block and the border inside the title block fit nicely. So I'm going to set the plot area to extents like so, and I'm going to center the plot like so as well. Now it might give you some weird numbers there. Don't worry about that at all. Make sure that you've got your scale set here to 1:1, and you'll notice those numbers update. So it should be roughly 5 and 10-ish when you center the plot. But if you want to untick it and tick it again, that's fine. It will just reset those values. Make sure your plot style table is set to monochrome.ctb, just black and white. We're just going to plot to black and white for now. And also down here, make sure that all of these tick boxes look the same as mine. So you've got plot object line weights, plot styles, plot paper space last, and last but not least, a quick sanity check. Make sure it is a landscape orientation with the A on the sheet of paper like that. Now you'll notice in the preview, we've got a red line all the way around our sheet before we plot and set it with this page setup. That's because the outer rectangle that we drew is now sitting on the edge of the sheet of paper outside of our printer limits. I'll explain in a moment. What we need to do is a preview first to make sure that this works. So we click on preview, and as you can see, the title block now fits nicely on the sheet. So right click and exit the preview and click on OK. Then what we do with our page setup aligned here like so in the blue, we double click on it and it applies it to the ISO A1 landscape layout tab. And you can see now that our inner boundary, the inner orange line, is inside the printer limits here, the dashed lines. Our other rectangle is outside, representing the edge of the sheet of paper. That's why in that little preview you get the red lines, because it's outside the printer limits. Doesn't matter, it's not going to plot and we don't actually need it to. We've used the outer rectangle to fit the sheet to the title block. So if I click on close now, our page setup is all in place and ready to go. The next thing we need to think about are viewports and annotative scaling to communicate our design intent from our floor plan. We're staying in our communication.dwg file, and what we're going to do now is look at placing some viewports in the ISO A1 landscape layout tab, which is where we are now with our title block all set up with our page setup that we set up in the previous video. Before we do anything else, let's jump back to the model tab though. I'm going to jump into the model tab, and there's our title block that we used, that we copied and brought into the layout tab, the ISO A1 landscape layout tab. So let's zoom in on that. We don't need it anymore. That can actually be removed. So just select the rectangles like so. There's 3 objects to select, and it's a right click and erase. Just double click on the wheel of your mouse to zoom extents again like so. So we're looking at the floor plan, and we've also got our little table here. We're going to set up some viewports now in the layout tab that will allow us to bring the floor plan in and the table in and some other details, and I'll show you how to use annotative scaling as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the ISO A1 landscape layout tab again here. We'll click here. And then what we're going to do as well, in the home tab on the ribbon, in the layers panel, just click on the flyout here and make sure that viewports, click on the word viewports like so, so that viewports is your current drafting layer. Just jumping into layer properties there for a moment, you can see that viewports is the current drafting layer with the green tick. It's also got a little printer symbol there with a little sort of stop no entry sign. That means that the viewports will not plot in your drawing. You don't want your viewports to show up, and you'll see why in a moment. I'll close the layer properties manager now. So what we're going to do now is go to our layout tab here on the ribbon, not the layout tab bottom left, the blue layout tab there. And when you do that, this gives us a load of tools that we can use in our layout tabs in our drawings. And we need to go to the layout viewports panel here, click on this little flyout here, and I can select a rectangular, polygonal, or object-related viewport. I'm going to select rectangular, like so. And then I'm going to come into the drawing area in the Layout tab. I'm going to click just there, top left, but don't snap to any objects. So I'm going to click once, drag the viewport like that, and it's asking me to specify the opposite corner. Can you see that? And then I'm going to click again, like that. And what that will do is it will generate a viewport. So I'm now, in essence, looking through that rectangular hole into the Model tab. So I'm looking now at my view of my floor plan, and there's my little table there as well. Now we need to give this viewport a scale, but before we do that, let's locate everything in the viewport. So double click inside the viewport boundary. You'll see it go bold. You can pan and zoom now, like so. And as you're doing that, one thing you'll notice down here is you get a little weird number. That's your scale. It's your viewport scale. So if I click there and set that to 1 to 100, to match my annotation scale, remember, in the Model tab, you'll notice all the dimensions appear. That's because those dimensions match the scale. They've got the annotation scale of 1 to 100, the viewport scale, 1 to 100. So they appear in the viewport. Now, only pan, don't zoom at this point because your scale is now set. So just hold down the wheel of your mouse, just drag it ever so gently so that the table isn't showing in that top left corner up here. Double click outside the viewport to deactivate it. Click on the edge of the viewport to see the grips. We can click on this grip here, just drag along a little bit, click there just to resize the viewport a little. Now, with the viewport still selected, you can come down to the status bar now here, click on the padlock, and now that viewport is locked at 1 to 100. Just hit escape a couple of times to deselect it. So that's our first viewport drawn. Now remember, we've got our little table to bring in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another rectangular viewport. So same process, there's rectangular. I'm going to come down here, click on this corner here using the endpoint snap, left click, drag the viewport like so to about there and click again. Double click inside the viewport and keep zooming in now until you see your little table, until it actually fills that viewport. It doesn't have to be to scale, this one. So just double click outside the viewport. There's our table highlighted now in the viewport itself. Now it looks like it's black there. Don't worry about that. That's just a color at the moment. That's fine. We're going to create one last viewport to a differing scale. So we're going to go rectangular viewport again up here and use this corner here and left click and drag the viewport so it fills that space there like that and click. We're then going to zoom in on the restrooms that we created. So double click inside the viewport to activate it. And then using zoom and pan, just get the restrooms to kind of fill that viewport there like that to about there. And you'll notice now that we have a differing scale, 0.029980. That's roughly about sort of 1 to 30. We do have a 1 to 30 scale when we click on the list there. So that 1 to 30 sets it up nicely. And we'll just pan across ever so slightly. Don't zoom now because you've set the scale to get it slightly centralized in the viewport. And again, double click outside the viewport to deactivate it. Click on the edge of the viewport like so. And then what we can do is we can hit the padlock there as well. That locks that viewport. Hit escape to deselect. So we've got two viewports at scale. This one's 1 to 100. This one's 1 to 30. The table one is not to scale. It's just showing the table in the viewport. But as you can see now, you can generate all these different viewports to have differing views from your model space in your Layout tab, ready to communicate your design intent. We're staying in our communication.dwg file. And what we're going to take a look at now is annotative scaling. Now, annotative scaling is a great tool in AutoCAD, and it allows you to maintain consistency of your annotation in your differing viewports of differing scales. Now, at the moment, we're in the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab, and we have two viewports of differing scales. So you'll notice we've got our general sort of arrangement, our floor plan here, and it shows all of our dimensions there going around the grid lines like so. Now, that's because those dimensions are annotative and scaled to an annotation scale of 1 to 100, which matches the viewport scale. If I select this viewport and look down at the status bar there, it's locked, but it still shows me the 1 to 100 viewport scale. If I hit escape to deselect that viewport and select this viewport, you can see it's at 1 to 30, like so. We don't have any dimensions in there just yet though, so I'm just going to hit escape to deselect. We're going to go back to the model tab and we're going to zoom in on the restrooms here, like so. So obviously using your mouse, zoom in using the wheel on your mouse and maybe panning a little bit as well, like so. I'm going to add a couple of dimensions to some of the toilet cubicles in the restrooms. So to do that, I need to go to my Annotate tab here on the ribbon and make sure that my dim layer override is set to that dim layer. Remember, the A010 DDIM layer. So that's already set there, and it should still be there from previous drawings that we've worked on. If it isn't, just click on the down arrow and you need to select that one there, A010 DDIM. That's your dim layer override layer. Now, before we place any dimensions, we need to set the appropriate annotation scale for the annotative scaling to work. So we come down here to the status bar and we select 1 to 30. That matches our restrooms viewport scale in the ISO A1 landscape layout tab. So let's place a couple of linear dimensions. Now you might want to zoom in a bit closer for this so that you can see the corners of the cubicles, just to make sure you're snapping to the right places. So if you want to get in nice and close like that, you can see the little sort of cubicle walls and doors there, and you can see the corners and the points you're going to snap to. So on the Dimensions panel now, in the Annotate tab, I'm going to click here on the flyout and select Linear. Now, obviously, other types of dimensions could be used here, but if you go and do the AutoCAD Essential Training course, we'll go into that in a lot more depth. What we're going to place here is literally a couple of linear dimensions. So I'm going to use that endpoint snap there, left click, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to get to that corner there and left click again. And as I come out and zoom out again, can you see we've got a 940 dimension there? So just drag it out a little bit to about there and click. Then we're going to do the same again. So I'm going to just zoom and pan. Now, you sometimes need to really zoom in close to snap. So if you get in nice and close there, you can see we're snapping to that little corner there again to place the next dimension. So you can zoom in first, click on the flyout again and select linear. And we're going to snap to that corner again there, that endpoint snap, and left click. Then you can roll back on the wheel, pan, zoom in on this corner, get the little inner corner there, left click again, and there's our dimension. If I zoom out slightly, there's the actual physical dimension there, and what I can do is I can zoom in a bit, pan down a bit, and just snap to that endpoint there so that they're lined in, obviously sort of in a line vertically by the cubicles there. So if I zoom out, I've placed a couple of dimensions now. If I hover over them, they're annotative. If I click on one of the dimensions, right click and go to properties, you'll see that the annotative scale for these dimensions is 1 to 30. So I'll close the properties palette. You can see we've used that 1 to 30 there. Hit escape to deselect the dimension, double click on the wheel to zoom extents. You'll notice that the dimensions here, the little sort of architectural ticks in the text, are much smaller than the dimensions here. That's because they've both got different annotation scales. But now, if I go to the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab, you'll see that we have dimensions here that are the same size as dimensions here, even though the viewports are at differing scales. So if I zoom in there, they're all nicely sized. If I zoom in there, they're all nicely sized. So you can see there that everything tallies up regardless of the viewport scale you're using. And that's the major benefit of annotation scaling and annotative dimensions that have those annotation scales applied to them. We're staying in our communication.dwg file. And what we're going to look at now is how we print and plot our particular drawing to communicate our design intent. We've created the design in the Model tab. We've created the Layout tab. We've created the title block. We've added scaled viewports with annotative dimensioning so that everybody can read the dimensions on our drawing as well. So what we need to think about now is, how do we plot this drawing? How do we get it out to the masses so that they can see how to perhaps build the building or work with the design of the component that we've dimensioned up in the drawing? Well, we've got the page set up already. So all we really need to do is go down to the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab. Now, you don't want to be in the Model tab here. You want to be in the Layout tab. And then right-click on the Layout tab, the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab, and go to Plot. Now, the good thing is we've already applied a page setup. There it is there. Our ISO A1 metric PDF high-res landscape page setup. So everything's already preset. And remember, our plot style table was set to monochrome CTB, black and white. Now, if I click on preview here, it's going to show me exactly what my drawing is going to look like before I plot it. So if I click on preview, everything looks fine. All the dimensions are working, all the details there. You'll notice the viewport boundaries are not plotting because they're set not to plot. So it makes the drawing look a lot neater. We've got one minor problem though. Our title and our headers of our table, because we had them as a white fill, remember, in the table style, they've decided to go a completely black color there. So this is why we do a preview before we plot, a quick sanity check. So what we'll do is we'll right click and exit our plot and just cancel the plot command. We're then going to right click here on the Layout tab and go to Page Setup Manager. The good thing is this preview has highlighted something that's an error in our drawing. So I'm going to select the page setup. There it is there. I'm going to click on Modify, like so. Now what I can do here is I can change the plot style table to something like grayscale if I wanted to, and that sort of black color there in the table would show as a gray, dark gray. Don't really want that. What I want to do is remove the fill from the actual table style. Well, that's quick and easy to do as well. So what we'll do is we'll just cancel the page setup. Don't worry about that. Close the Page Setup Manager. Let's lose that fill that we've got on the title and the headers of our table. Quick and easy to do. We go back to the Model tab and we go to the Annotate tab on the ribbon, like so. We go over here to the Tables panel and click here on the little arrow. That brings up our table styles, and there's our training table style. So I'll click on Modify. And you can see there, if I go to Title, like so, and then go to General here, there's my fill color there. So I'm going to say None, like so. I'm then going to go to the down arrow again and select Header, and go to the General tab again, and Fill Color and None, like so. So you can see now, it just looks like a regular table with no color fills. So I'll OK that now, and I'll OK it again by clicking on Close. And you'll notice my table up here updates. If I zoom in, you can see there's no fill on the title or the headers anymore. Double click on the wheel to zoom extents. Good CAD practice to get into. Always zoom extents when you come out of one space and go into another space. So I'm coming out of model space now and going back into the Layout tab, the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab. And you'll notice now that my table hasn't got that infill, that black infill in the Layout tab anymore. So if I now right click on the ISO A1 Landscape Layout tab and go to Plot, you'll see now when I click on Preview, everything looks a lot better. I've got my title block, it's telling me it's the ground floor plan view, and so on. So I've got the table, the general arrangement plan view, and the restrooms plan view, all in place on the ground floor in my drawing. So all I've got to do now is simply right click and select Plot, and what will happen now is it'll ask me where do I want that to go. So I'll just pop that on, say, the desktop in my Windows computer here, like so. So there's the name of the drawing, Communication, ISO A1 Landscape.pdf, like so. If I click on Save now, it'll print that drawing and off it goes. And you'll notice it's popped up on the screen there, showing me in my PDF in my browser there. So I'm using basically Microsoft Edge Chromium. And what I can do, if I minus that out, there you go. There's my drawing as a PDF. Let's open that up in my browser for me quickly and easily. That's what my PDFs are set to do on this particular computer. So you can see there that it's opened up and I can see the drawing is plotted effectively. What I can do now is I can save that drawing if I want to, do a save as. I can save that to a known location somewhere, or perhaps even send that to somebody using something like Outlook with the PDF as an attachment. I'll just click on cancel there, like so. So I've got everything set up and ready to go. My drawing's ready to go. I can send that out to people. I've now finished my simple drawing in AutoCAD. We've now come to the end of the Learning AutoCAD course, and I really do hope you've enjoyed it and enjoyed learning the basics of AutoCAD. So what are your next steps after completing the Learning AutoCAD course? Well, you now know the necessary basics to work with AutoCAD. You can generate simple drawings and print them from AutoCAD as well. What you need to be thinking about now is moving on to the AutoCAD 2023 Essential Training course. Now, this is a much deeper dive into AutoCAD, and the Essential Training course gives you that deeper knowledge, that more rounded knowledge of the AutoCAD application. And upon completing both courses, you're well on your way to becoming a proficient AutoCAD user.